But it happened, of course, on the Friday qualifying session. There's the grid. Mansell, Schumacher alongside him, then the first McLaren, the second Williams of Riccardo Patrese, fourth on the grid, Senna in third place, Ivan Capelli in the Ferrari, and it's been declared, as you've just probably seen, a wet race. And Karl Wendlinger there, that is a superb performance by the Austrian driver in the grossly underfunded March. They're running their cars on the smell of an oil rag. Yet Wendlinger, who was 7th on the grid in South Africa and 9th on the grid in Brazil, has done the same thing again here in Spain. He's starting from 9th, and he's a very underestimated driver. He's living in the shadow of his ex-Mercedes-Benz sports car teammate, Michael Schumacher, but Wendlinger needs to be watched. The car goes very well at this circuit, which is flat, it's not bumpy, it's very smooth, and it's actually flattering the McLaren chassis, as Ayrton Senna said himself yesterday. We're looking from Riccardo Patrese's car now, and ahead of him is Nigel Mansell. Now, there they go. There is Patrese easing away. Wendlinger, by the way, was on slick tyres. Now, the course here, they go down the straight. You remember that fantastic shot from last year of Mansell passing Ayrton Senna to go into the lead at the first right-hander, which is the one that they're approaching now. It's the 11th turn. Then they go into a left-hander and start climbing round the Curvone, a very sweeping right-hander in 5th and 6th gear. You're looking at it now. Along the short straight into another right-hander. Then they loop round and they finally come out of a right-hand bend at some 150 miles an hour in dry conditions.
Yes, well, we think, and I stress that we only think because it's been pretty confused who's doing what with tyres down there, but we think that Wendlinger is the only person who has gone on slicks. And I have to say that I think he's doing the right thing at the moment. It's a brave decision, though, of course. If the rain gets any harder, then he will be, as we say, up the creek without a paddle, and he'll have to come in and change to his paddling wets. But as conditions stand at the moment, 26 cars running around on this only lightly damp track will dry it out pretty quickly, and if that's the case, the remaining 25 cars will all have a pit stop to make. And believe you me, in these conditions, the slicks work as well as wets. They're not quite as easy to drive on, but Wendlinger, if he uses his head, and he's used it probably right so far, can take it easy and let his tyres warm up quite conservatively while everybody skates around beside him.
See Nigel Mansell's tear-off visor sticking out of the right-hand side of his helmet there. He'll be pulling that off probably when it starts to get wet, if it starts to get wet. There he is, responsibly leading the rest of the field round, followed by Schumacher, Senna, Patrese, fourth on the grid, Ivan Capelli in the Ferrari. Now, the Ferrari is to be watched in this race. I said earlier on that Alesi was in terrific form. That is Gianni Morbidelli in the old Minardi, because he tried the new one here, but they've decided not to race it. But as I was saying, Jean Alesi and Capelli have gone much better here than they have in any of the 3 previous races. Ferrari have done over 3,000 kilometres of testing, mainly at Imola, since the Brazilian Grand Prix 4 weeks ago, and the results are showing. So, you looked through Nigel Mansell's camera there. There are cameras on the 2 Williams Renaults and the 2 McLaren Hondas of Mansell, Patrese, world champion Ayrton Senna and Gerhard Berger. 65 laps. There's Roland Brunschreider in the grey jacket, the FISA official who starts all the races. When all 26 cars are in position, you will see the man with the green flag cross the back of the grid. Then Brunschreider will light the red, and anything between 4 and 7 seconds thereafter, the green will go, and the first European Grand Prix of 1992 here in Spain will be on. With a totally unpredictable race, there's the flag. Schumacher creeping, and behind him, so was Jean Alesi, and I would not be at all surprised if there's a penalty for Schumacher. goes up into second place. Alesi up into third alongside Schumacher. So it is Mansell leading into turn one. Patrese is second, Alesi is third, Schumacher is fourth. Berger is trying to go round the outside, and Senna is following Berger. And they are all away. Somebody's one of the Minardis. I think it was Morbidelli that went across the gravel trap there. But Nigel Mansell now on this damp circuit using wet treaded tyres leads Patrese, Alesi. That is Michael Schumacher in the new, very distinctive Benetton, followed by Martin Brundle. So Martin Brundle is in fifth position. Two Benettons, fourth and fifth, ahead of both the McLarens. Berger is ahead of Ayrton Senna, and the race is starting to take shape already, with Nigel Mansell, who, remember, knows the conditions at this circuit at the moment better than anybody else, having experienced both types of tyre in Spain, away on the first lap. And he's protected by his teammate, but that doesn't mean to say that Riccardo Patrese won't be challenging for the lead, because he wants to win the race just as much as Nigel Mansell does. We're with Senna now. Or we were. Well, already in the race, it looks as though the McLaren setup and the comparative lack of power from the Honda V12 engine is having to give best to the two Williams Renaults. Mansell and Patrese tested the new RS4 V10 Renault engine on the last 2 days, pronounced it better than the RS3, but they're not using that here, and Alesi is in third position. Williams Renault leads, Mansell. Williams Renault second, Patrese. Ferrari is third, Alesi. In fourth position, Schumacher. Senna up to fifth, Brundle sixth, Berger seventh, and Ivan Capelli in the second Ferrari is in eighth position. This is lap 2. So now out of the Elf turn into the third gear left-hander, round the Curvone. So there's the man who's won the first 3 Grand Prix of 1992, Nigel Mansell, a maximum of 30 points, led Patrese by a whisker under 1 second, and his standing start lap was 1 minute 55 seconds compared with his pole position time of 1 minute 20, but the conditions are a lot damper, and of course he started from standstill. So Mansell, Patrese, and then the Ferrari of Alesi.
Yes, and further down the field, Wendlinger certainly has struggled on the first lap, although he wasn't short of grip getting off the line. He's back in 20th place or so. But it'll be interesting to see how things develop from his point of view as the track starts to dry out. At the moment, there's not much change in the conditions. Rain still spotting.
Remember how last year Ayrton Senna won the first 4 Grand Prix of 1991 and was seemingly in a tremendously strong, indeed unbeatable position for the World Championship. Well, he won the World Championship, but not by the margin we expected him to, because Williams came good in the middle of the season. 3 successive victories for Nigel Mansell. Well, now the boot is very much on the other foot as Nigel Mansell comes through to complete lap 2. And you can see that in the background, in third position, Alesi, but behind him there's developing quite a traffic jam, because it's Schumacher 4th, Senna still 5th, Brundle is still in 6th position, ahead of Berger 7th, Capelli 8th, Comas 9th, Briard is in 10th position, Tarquini and Martini 11th and 12th. We're with Mansell.
Yes, and Schumacher now has recovered from his slightly messed up start, which one of the few flaws we've seen from Schumacher at all, and that was that the pressure of being on the front row may have got to him a little bit, in that he was a bit jumpy at the start, and he really penalised himself as one of the Tyrrells goes in. He penalised himself. That's Andrea De Cesaris with some sort of problem, but because of course he had his foot on the brake, stopping his creeping just as the light went to green, and so that really hurt him, Schumacher, and he was very slow away, but he's recovered now and starting to press Alesi.
And as you see, Andrea De Cesaris is the first to make a tyre stop. No problem with the car, apparently. He made a brave decision to stop and change his tyres. And now Mansell is leading Patrese by over 1.5 seconds. And Ayrton Senna is still stuck behind the incredible Michael Schumacher. Well, we're keeping a very careful eye on this tyre situation, because it seems to me that if conditions stay as they are now, notwithstanding the fact that it is damp, that Nigel Mansell will probably have to come in and change his tyres. So he goes through around that 150 mile an hour in these conditions, then to complete lap 3, leading previously by 1.4 seconds from Riccardo Patrese. And now the lead has increased. Mansell leads with the fastest lap of the day so far. 1 minute 47.2, leads Patrese by 3 seconds. And the battle is for third position between Alesi and Schumacher. The producer is concentrating on the leader, but Schumacher is right behind Jean Alesi.
Well, the rain is holding off a little bit now, and certainly it's not wetting the track. Where the cars were sitting on the grid, the patches are still dry, and for sure the drivers should start to think about changing tyres. In fact, De Cesaris has had another problem. He's out of the car. It was not a routine tyre change. Of course, as he arrives in the pits, the team jump on the car and change the tyres anyway, but he is out of the race. But now we'll watch for Wendlinger, see if he can make any progress. Mansell, you can see it's still slippery. He's still sliding the car nicely there, and Patrese behind him. See the car sliding around. It's a good picture of just how nervous these cars are in these conditions.
And you're looking now at the battle for third position between the Ferrari of Jean Alesi, recognisable by the yellow flashes on the front and rear wings, in contrast to the wings of his teammate Ivan Capelli. Alesi is third, Schumacher is fourth. You just see behind Michael Schumacher the red and white McLaren Honda of Ayrton Senna. And believe me, Ayrton Senna will be trying his hardest. So the fact that he is in fifth position, as far down as he is, because he's some 5 seconds behind race leader Nigel Mansell, is going through now to complete his fourth lap out of 65. Now, this is Mansell's point of view. This is where he passed Senna in that memorable shot last year, going into turn 1 and approaching it at about 195 miles an hour, backing off, going down through the semi-automatic gearbox, right, left. He's in third gear now, and Schumacher having a look at Jean Alesi. It's the Ferrari. And it hasn't been a terribly happy move from Tyrrell to Ferrari for Jean Alesi. You can see the gap there, half a second between him and Michael Schumacher, with Ayrton Senna still fifth, Berger in sixth position, so both the McLarens are in the top 6, and you can see there that Gerhard Berger has closed right up to his teammate. You're watching Alesi third, Schumacher fourth, and Martin Brundle is off, and he's out again for the 4th time in 4 races since he joined Benetton. He's going to retire because he is beached on the curb there. He's got the bottom of the Benetton wedged over the curb. The spinning rear wheels are clear of the ground, and unless something amazing happens, the unfortunate Martin Brundle, who started well from 6th on the grid, again retires from the Grand Prix.
Yes, and that's sad to see, but I'm afraid it's all proving a little bit too much for Martin this year with Schumacher in the team. He's been too fast for him all the time, and the pressure seems to have produced mistakes from Brundle, and if anything, he's been overdriving, and that really looks to be a shame. And I would not be surprised if certainly the Italian contingent in the Benetton team would be seeking to replace him. But let's hope he can stay put and gather himself up, because he's a very determined man. He's got a lot of ability. As Alesi leads quite a train now, foreshortened a little bit, of course, by the camera position there. But Alesi with Schumacher breathing down his neck and having a look wherever he can, and the two McLarens, maximum pressure for Jean Alesi. No, let's hope that Martin Brundle can hold down his place for a bit longer, relax a little bit, and just concentrate on his job, because I'm sure if he could take his mind off Schumacher, he would do better.
Well, after my correction from James in Brazil, I mustn't call it a crocodile behind the third position man, Jean Alesi. It is a snake, and it is a snake of 4 cars. Alesi, Schumacher, Senna and Berger together in 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th places. There are 2 of them. So again, it looks like the story of the race is Williams out front. Well, it is. And the gap between Riccardo Patrese in 2nd position, who is nearly 4 seconds now behind Mansell, and Alesi, who is in 3rd position, and you're looking at him now, is 4 seconds. We're with Senna, and ahead of Ayrton Senna is the distinctive Benetton B192, and in its first race, designed by... Oh, and now, watch the way Senna is having to correct all the time. And if you get a cockpit shot from the Williams Renault of either Mansell or Patrese, you will see that they are having a much easier time of controlling their cars than the 2 McLaren pilots.
And Patrese is starting to catch Mansell at the moment. He's just put up another fastest lap, which supersedes his own fastest lap. Well, of course, the track's drying out, times are coming down. But Riccardo Patrese, and you see how he's been signed current, and Schumacher is inside Jean Alesi, and Alesi gave him very little room indeed. And if there had been a coming together there, you'd have to have said that was down to Alesi. He got a lot of stick of criticism from Martin Brundle after their coming together in Brazil. And now we get a view from Senna's car, and Alesi, oh dear, their wheels were actually interlocked there, but didn't make contact. And really, I think Alesi, here we see it yet again, but and Berger took advantage of that to get around Senna, by the look of it. So a bit of a schmozzle there.
So Alesi to 3rd and Berger to 5th. And the young German is demonstrating that he is very much world championship class. He knows no fear. He went off at colossal speed in the appallingly wet session of practice, slammed into the wall, just got out of the car and nonchalantly walked away. So there's Schumacher 3rd, Alesi 4th, Senna 5th, Berger 6th, and Capelli 7th now together.
And up front, are we seeing the long-awaited charge and adrenaline from Patrese that we've been hoping and waiting for this season? Mansell over the line. Patrese behind him, we'll give you the gap in a moment, and Mansell has in fact responded and reopened the gap side in. Now looking at the start again. And good shot of Roland Brunscherider's back, but not a very wide angle of the start.
Lap 8. Now you're watching a replay of the start. You can see the 2 Williams Renaults ahead. You can see Schumacher forcing his way past Jean Alesi as Alesi retakes the 3rd position, and we rejoin the race on lap 8 out of 65 with Nigel Mansell controlling it from the front. Fastest lap, he has responded to the previous fastest lap of his teammate Riccardo Patrese with a lap 0.6 of a second faster than the Italian. So it would look as though Nigel Mansell here has got plenty in reserve. Meantime, Senna. And look at the gap between Senna in 4th place and Schumacher. 5th still Alesi, 6th Berger, 7th Ivan Capelli, and I think Ivan Capelli is a man to watch because the Italian, we're back with Ayrton Senna now, looking, I think, at that battle for the change.
Coming to pass Alesi here and getting inside him on the straight, on the main straight as they head for turn 1. So now we'll see how Senna whether he can reel in Michael Schumacher. Schumacher, remember, out-qualified him. The 2 Williamses completing another lap. And Patrese much closer, but of course they had traffic in the way. I suspect Mansell, we didn't see, but I suspect Mansell was held up there by that back marker. Started to lap the back markers already, but Patrese now under 2 seconds, the gap, and a new fastest lap for Patrese. Schumacher is some 3 seconds ahead of Senna. And a big gap, of course, now between the Williamses and Schumacher in third place.
And Karl Wendlinger, that we were talking about, the Austrian in the march, who started the race on slick tyres, has been into the pits and changed them. And the race order now on lap 9 out of 65, as you watch race leader Nigel Mansell, he is leading Riccardo Patrese, who has made the fastest lap of the race so far by just under 2 seconds. There's the confirmation. Schumacher's Benetton third, followed by Senna, some 3 seconds now behind the German. In fifth position, Jean Alesi, 1 second, there he is, behind Ayrton Senna, and about the same ahead of Gerhard Berger. Seventh is Ivan Capelli, the last of the cars in your pictures. Replay here of Gerhard Berger in the McLaren number 2, taking Jean Alesi in the Ferrari and moving up a place. But for Alesi subsequently retook that position because he's now in fifth place. And we are riding with the McLaren. You can see as Ayrton Senna has to fight with the wheel for correction how superlatively quick a driver's reflexes have to be. Nigel Mansell has just gone through. Here he is, and again, although he's just put up again another fastest lap, 1 minute 43.5, he's only leading Patrese, number 6 there, by just under 2.5 seconds.
Yes, I think Mansell is in command, though. He's got plenty in hand. He had to give up a bit for the back marker then, but he pulled back well over half a second that lap on Patrese, or opened up. And in the meantime, Schumacher and Senna's gap has not really changed, so it's just over 3 seconds, and that promises to be a very close fought and hard battle.
What a battle here going on between Alesi and Berger for that fifth position. And the man that they're all lapping is Andrea Chiesa in the Fonmetal with the Ford HB V8 engine. You recognise Chiesa, the Italian, by his yellow helmet.
Now, for the purposes of enjoying this race, I suggest that for the time being we pretend that, we won't keep an eye on it for you, but we pretend that the Williamses aren't in it, because had they not been, we've got a very good race for what would otherwise be the lead. But certainly the race for third place is raging at the moment. Schumacher holding a 3-second advantage over Senna, but stretching right to the limit to do so. Senna chasing hard, and Alesi, Berger and Capelli all queuing up behind. So there are the leaders. Mansell still holding on to his lead, and he's opening it out again. Looks pretty comfortable, seems to be able to turn it on at will over Patrese at the moment. The lead now over 3 seconds. New fastest lap of the race for Mansell, down to 1 minute 42, and we are certainly getting into slick, tight conditions now. Wendlinger, I fear, having started on what may be, with hindsight, the wrong tyres, has certainly, in my opinion, compounded the felony by changing onto wets at this stage. He should have stuck with it, because I would have thought slicks. And we've got one pit caller then. I didn't see who it was. Whether that's for a tyre change or not, I don't know. It was Chiesa. But Chiesa circulating at the back probably has some other problem.
Well, James and I are in the cloistered calm of an enclosed commentary box. It looks to me as though the road is drying out, but what does Jonathan Palmer think? He's in the open.
Well, it does seem, Murray, that the rain does continue to fall. It's got a little bit lighter, but nevertheless it's still very much there. And I wouldn't say that it's going to get too much quicker, sufficiently rapidly to be on slicks in the next few laps anyway.
So that is Alesi in the maroon Ferrari. This is a replay of Gerhard Berger having a look to try and take the 5th place from the French Sicilian, which he failed to do.
And a terrific battle those two are having. And charging is what they're doing. They've swapped places once. Berger was trying to get inside, threatening Alesi, trying to force a mistake. And one of the Ligiers has just come into the pits, and remains to be seen if he's coming for slicks this early.
Well, it's the rather unhappy Thierry Boutsen who has been out-qualified and out-driven here by his teammate Eric Comas. But on lap 12 out of 65, this is the excitement. Mansell is, comparatively speaking, out on his own. 3.7 seconds ahead of Patrese, who is now some 12 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher in third place. Senna is in fourth position, 4 seconds behind the German, Schumacher. And Alesi is now starting to ease away from Gerhard Berger, who is in sixth position. You're looking at him there. Now look for the second Ferrari. There it is, of Ivan Capelli. And Capelli is only 2 seconds behind Gerhard Berger, who is sixth. And looks to me as though he may be starting to reel the McLaren in. All the work that McLaren have been doing for the last 4 weeks with Honda on the engine, on the handling, on the excellent semi-automatic gearbox, which Mark Blundell, their test driver, has been working very hard on with the technicians, hasn't yielded much in terms of results, closing the gap to the Williams. You're looking at Nigel Mansell on his way. Now he's on lap 12. There's a long way to go. We're still wondering what is going to happen about the track, whether those tyres will overheat and necessitate a coming in for Mansell. But if he has to come in, so will everybody else. There is Patrese in the background. Now Schumacher is some 13 seconds now behind the car that you're looking at. And just as in South Africa, in Mexico and in Brazil, the magnificent Williams, designed by the team led by Patrick Head, with aerodynamicist Adrian Newey, are very much the class of the field, thanks in no small measure to their excellent Renault V10 engine. And this is giving the Renault people an enormous fillip, I know. They're very anxious to beat Honda. There is a rumour, and I emphasise rumour, going around that Honda are going to pull out of Formula One at the end of this season and go to Indianapolis. And if that is true, there is, of course, nothing they would like more than to have a victorious last season. Oh, and that's Mansell! And that we get big picture break up there, but Mansell seemed to have a big problem there. Bags of sawing at the wheel. We'll watch out for him as... there it is. That's the answer. And it was Gerhard Berg. And there, the spin. Spin for Jean Alesi. Well, he's been spinning frantically all through practice, and he's carrying it on in the race. He was spinning on Friday, spinning on Saturday. He's down a place. Now, this is a replay from Gerhard Berger's point of view as he goes inside the Ferrari. And that was the sawing at the wheel, my apologies, as Alesi loses it.
Yes, I'm not sure that there wasn't some contact there with Berger, who got inside, and I think one has to say, looking at it, that was two hard chargers charging into each other, albeit gently in these conditions. And we'll see if Alesi has been able to continue without further drama. Certainly didn't lose a great deal of time as Nigel Mansell keeps soldiering imperiously on. Now just 3 seconds ahead of Riccardo Patrese. He got a little bit held up by the traffic again, but I don't think he's finding that a problem. Alesi's dropped back to 7th place behind Capelli, and he's only 4.5 seconds behind Capelli, so he didn't lose a lot of time. But of course, overtaking being as difficult as it is in Formula One, it's a mountain to climb to make these places back. Now we look at Mansell on the wetter part of the circuit. And there is Berger. Because Berger's now up in 5th place.
We're on lap 14. You know the lead positions. Here they are, and with confirmation of the others. Nigel Mansell, race leader, you're watching. Patrese is 2nd, Schumacher is 3rd, Senna is 4th, Berger is in 5th position, Capelli is 6th, Jean Alesi is in 7th place, Eric Comas, excellent in the Ligier, is in 8th place, ahead of the Tyrrell driver Olivier Griard, with Gabriele Tarquini in the Fonmetal 10th. Pierluigi Martini is in 11th place, JJ Leto in the Dallara is 12th. Michele Alboreto in the footwork car, which has gone extremely well here in practice. 5th fastest in the wet practice yesterday. Michele Alboreto is 13th. Bertrand Gachot in the La Rousse is 14th. Mika Häkkinen, Lotus, 15th. Gugelmin in the Jordan is 16th. Johnny Herbert has charged up from 26th to 17th and is doing here what he's done in 2 other races this year, fighting his way through the field. As Mansell there, you see, coming out of the right-hander, very quick indeed, nearly lost it. And that was to go through and complete another lap. Well, here he is, Nigel Mansell leading. He's got 3.6 second lead now over Patrese.
Well, in fact, the lap times of the leaders are now increasing, and the circuit doesn't appear to be getting wetter. We'll check that with Jonathan Palmer, and I would have said that this is because their wet weather tyres are going off. If that's the case, we're just finding out from Jonathan if that is the case. And over to Jonathan for a report on the weather.
Well, quickly before Jonathan speaks, that is Johnny Herbert, who has spun out of the race, out of the car. Another retirement. Andrea De Cesaris is out. Martin Brundle is out. Johnny Herbert is out. And the Ferrari mechanics look to me as though they're getting ready for a pit stop. As you watch, I think, a replay of Herbert losing it. There he is. And incidentally, the new Lotus 107 has been introduced here in Spain, and what an absolutely superb motor car it looks. So that may have been Johnny Herbert's last drive in the previous car, which dates back to 1990, and he'll be out hopefully with his teammate Mika Häkkinen at Imola in the new 107 Ford HB V8 powered car. Now we are on lap 16. Mansell still controlling the race from the front.
Yes, apparently there's no change in the weather, and so it's imperative for those who want to do well to get into the pits and get onto dry tyres, because the wet weather tyres, remember, are much softer rubber than the dry weather tyres, and it's quite clear that as the track is drying out, they're starting to overheat and the performance is dropping off. And at that stage, certainly, when the performance of wets drops off, dry slick tyres are a big improvement. So once again, I'm amazed at the fact that the whole field seems to march out of step and everybody is over conservative about changing their tyres. There's a big advantage to be gained here for somebody to stick his neck out and do the right thing. So if you can call that sticking your neck out.
You just saw Gerhard Berger there in 5th place. Ahead of him is teammate Ayrton Senna, and Berger, as you watch Michael Schumacher in 3rd position, Berger is catching Ayrton Senna in 4th position. The unhappy Brazilian, who thus far this season has only scored 4 World Championship points after being so successful, World Champion in 1991. That's the very distinctive, look at the nose of that Ross Brawn and Rory Byrne designed Benetton B192, and you'll see it looks for all the world like the profile of a shark at the front.
And certainly this is the best performance this season from Riccardo Patrese, that there's no doubt. He's only 3.2 seconds behind Mansell, and I wonder if he's, with all his experience, thinking of getting in for a relatively early tyre change to try and get in front of Mansell. The advantage will be with the early changers, those who can do it, as the McLarens thread their way through the traffic. Christian Fittipaldi there, following Gerhard Berger now.
Martin, it looked as if you had a problem. We saw you drop back. We then saw you running again, but then having a spin. Tell us what happened.
Oh, we had the clutch problem, Jonathan. In the warm-up, the clutch went away. We thought we'd fix it. Going to the line, I had the same problem again. We just bled it. That's all you can do on the line. But unfortunately, on lap 2, I lost the clutch pedal completely, which makes it very difficult to down change. I slid wide earlier on and lost 3 places. I was regaining one of those with Comas, and he tried to come back at me on the inside of turn 3, understeered into my right rear tyre, and spun off. I kept the engine running, but unfortunately it's stranded on a on a small curb, and the rear wheels can't get good traction, and it's just sitting there beached, basically.
A really great shame, Martin. You really are having some lousy luck at the moment, and it can only surely get better in the near future.
Jonathan Palmer talking to the unfortunate Martin Brundle, who has now retired his Benetton from all the first 4 races. Well, now we are on lap 18, and Nigel Mansell has lapped everybody up to 17th place. Aguri Suzuki already in the race. And it really does look to me as, yes, you see, both Senna and Berger and Alesi are getting a real slide on as they complete the lap. You come downhill at about 130 miles an hour, accelerating to 150 into that last right-hander in the straight, and it is slippery there.
That's because their tyres have had it, and that is the problem. The track has got more grip on it, the tyres have overheated, and I'm very surprised that nobody has yet come in for a change of tyres onto slicks, unless they're worrying about the rain continuing. The problem is, of course, the sky looks to be very much unchanged, and in fact, Sambroli's going up now, and one can understand, in a way, the reticence of drivers to do anything when the weather looks so uncertain. So here's Jonathan on the subject of the conditions.
Well, it's not so much uncertain, James, as just being persistently wet, persistently raining. You know, the rain has let up a little bit, but now it's coming down quite solidly, and I really don't see that they can run on slick tyres. I think they've got to soldier on the wet.
Yes, I'll support you on that, Jonathan, now, because I've just had another look at the track from where we are, and at long last the dry patches that were on the grid have gone away, and we can actually see the rain coming down now, which we couldn't before through our windows. So certainly, yes, and in fact there's water now moving. We can see the water moving now on Mansell's car. So suddenly the track has got wetter. The interesting thing now will be how much damage has been done to the wets. The people who've looked after their wets better, not that one bothers to do that, will have an advantage now if the track gets really wet, because certainly as it was drying out, there would have been quite a lot of wear and damage done to the treaded tyres.
Well, you saw Nigel Mansell's Williams snaking under power there. That is Gerhard Berger, who is in 5th position, 2 seconds behind Ayrton Senna. The race order now on lap 19 out of 65 as you watch 5th position Gerhard Berger, Mansell leading Patrese by just over 4 seconds and lapping faster than his teammate Schumacher in 3rd position, and you're watching Mika Häkkinen followed by Maurizio Gugelmin, both of whom are about to be lapped by Nigel Mansell. Gugelmin in 16th place in the Jordan Yamaha moves over and lets Nigel Mansell through. Takes a very wide line indeed. And behind Senna in 4th place, Berger is 5th, Capelli is in 6th position, Alesi is in 7th place, 8th is Eric Comas, 9th is Griard, 10th is Tarquini, 11th is Leto, and 12th is teammate Pierluigi Martini. So that is Nigel Mansell going through, whilst Maurizio Gugelmin, the Brazilian, driving with the Jordan team after having been with March and Leighton House for so long. And now Mansell passes Mika Häkkinen, who, like Johnny Herbert, who is out of the race, will be looking forward to driving the new Lotus 107 with its unique suspension at Imola, the next Grand Prix. Senna, followed by Berger. Senna only on 3 points at the present moment for 4th position, which would give him just a few more in the championship.
Well, that gives you a good impression there of the spray and the fact that the rain is now coming down steadily, and we've got a properly wet race now. No more doubt about this. But it certainly will be a factor of performance for the drivers in just how well they've managed to preserve their wet tyres. As I say, it's not something that they would normally have taken into account in the early part of the race. But the very soft rubber and the wide channels allow the rubber to move a lot. And there's a Williams off, and it looks like Patrese getting out of his car, and that is Riccardo Patrese.
But why? Are we going to see a replay? He's just on the grass. Well, here he is. He was coming up. He's lost. Well, he's lost. Now, this is underlining everything that James has been saying earlier on, as Patrese's right front hits the concrete wall and he proceeds at speed backwards. He'll be perfectly all right, but it would have been a nasty clonk. Now, this confirms what James was saying about the heavily treaded wet tyres, which have taken a pounding in the drier conditions earlier on and have worn down, and Patrese, lining up to get through and lap somebody ahead of him, just lost it and went into the wall. So now Schumacher is up into second position in the Benetton B192.
And while you were talking there, Murray, at the end of that replay shot, I was desperately trying to get a look from the onboard camera. We're looking again at his right front tyre. It's just not quite a good enough view to see how badly damaged the tread was. Now, Mansell, I'm sure, will have already been informed of his teammate's demise, and that will be a warning to him to tread very carefully. He's got plenty in hand as he threads his way through the traffic. Frank Williams, I'm sure, who's not watching the monitor, will have seen the same pictures as us. He will have informed Mansell, warned him that conditions out there are particularly treacherous. But Mansell now has less pressure, because of course Patrese is pressure to him, despite the fact he's his teammate, and with nearly 22 seconds in hand, he can afford to take a very conservative approach. He's got a lot of traffic around, but he really doesn't have to hurry.
And that, unless Mansell was extraordinarily unlucky later in the season, means that it's going to be very, very difficult indeed for Riccardo Patrese effectively to challenge his teammate for the World Championship. But we're on lap 21. We're not quite 1/3 of the distance into this 65-lap race. There's a long way to go yet. Ayrton Senna, that we're with, is now in third position, of course. He said yesterday that the wet conditions that we've been having here in Spain have enabled the McLaren car to close the gap to the Williams, because the horsepower disparity between his Honda V12 and the Williams Renault V10 didn't matter so much. And he's got a battle on his hands now, because that is Gerhard Berger behind him, just 1.8 seconds behind the Brazilian, who's going down the long start and finish straight into turn 1 here, starting to climb up towards the highest part of the course. Senna, Berger behind him, and hit the back of his car was stepping right out. They're teetering on the line between adhesion and not very much, staying on the course and going off it. They're on lap 22, which is the 1/3 distance lap in this race. And Michael Schumacher in the Benetton B192, who has had 2 magnificent third places already this season, because he finished in that position in Mexico and Brazil, is a superb second in only his 10th Grand Prix, having started second on the grid. You're watching Senna third, Berger fourth, followed by the 2 Ferraris, Capelli and Alesi.
There's Mansell. Threads his way through the traffic. He appears to have come up on the Dalaras, running around in formation. And in the mead before that, we had shots of Ayrton Senna, and clearly the world champion is working very hard indeed. Suffering with the equipment, but he's certainly showing us why he's world champion, as Martini has a go inside his teammate, is it? And gets through as well, past JJ Leto. Mansell can afford to sit back and watch. He does not want to get involved in any of that, and there are the 2 McLarens, and Berger giving Ayrton Senna a good run for his money, and Senna, I suspect, in the early laps probably did a little bit more damage to his treaded tyres, which may mean that he's suffering a bit for grip, because he's certainly really sliding the car, using all the road, using all his considerable powers, and not getting very much reward for it to boot. that certainly is a fine example to all young drivers as a world champion, showing us why he's world champion, because irrespective of the uncompetitiveness relatively of his car, he's giving it everything he's got.
Mansell leads, threading his way through the field. Now coming up to try and take Gabriele Tarquini, who is in 9th position in the Fonvital, having passed the two Delaras of Martini, who is just ahead of JJ Leto. So Mansell leads. Schumacher is 15 seconds behind him on lap 23. Then Senna and Berger is 8 seconds ahead of Capelli, who is 8th, and Alesi, who is 5th, and Alesi, who is 6th. But an excellent 7th place is Eric Comas in the Ligier Renault. Some reward, some considerable reward for the enormous amount of work that Frank Durney and his team of French technicians have been putting in on the car. And Comas is really showing up Thierry Boutsen, as again Martini has a go at JJ Leto. We missed what happened, but we're with Berger now. That's Senna ahead of him. And there's certainly no team orders, of course, between the two McLaren drivers, Ayrton Senna and Gerhard Berger, any more than there was between Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese. And Gerhard Berger, for self-respect, psychological and various other reasons, will be anxious to get ahead of Ayrton Senna, who will be equally anxious to stop him.
Yes, and Berger is one of life's great triers. He's a charger. He always gives of his very best and tries his hardest, and right now he's giving it a real go, and he'll be enjoying this race. He's now getting in a position to attack his teammate, his more illustrious teammate. In the meantime, Mansell's lead has shrunk quite a bit, but then he's been in the thick of traffic. He's now 11 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher. Schumacher, of course, hasn't reached that big glut of traffic yet, and in his turn he'll have to thread his way through that. He'll probably get through them quicker for two reasons. One is because the traffic itself will be forewarned by Mansell's arrival that they're being lapped by the leaders, and secondly, of course, the bravery of youth, etc., and the fact that Schumacher has to charge, and Mansell, quite rightly, has the luxury of being able to take a very conservative attitude to the traffic. So expect Schumacher to probably catch during the traffic, but Mansell has the race well under control at the moment.
In the background, Schumacher coming up to Maurizio Gugelmin's Jordan, and the sparks flying from underneath the front wing and the rear of the Benetton. And now Berger is almost in a position to attack his teammate for that fourth position. And interestingly, Gerhard Berger is ahead of Senna. We're with Berger now. He's ahead of Senna in the World Championship by a mere 1 point. And the fact that both the McLarens are still going on this, the 25th lap of this race, and both of them in the top 4, means to say that they're both going to score World Championship points for McLaren as a constructor if they finish where they are now. And McLaren desperately need those points because Williams are some 39 points ahead of them, or were when this race began. So the battle in the race at the moment, the really interesting one, is the one you're watching, or were a moment ago, between Senna and Berger for 3rd position, Capelli and Alesi in the two Ferraris, second, separated by some 5 seconds. 7th is Comas, 8th is Griard. Everybody else has been lapped by Mansell, including Tarquini, who is 9th, Leto, who is 10th, Martini 11th, Alboreto 12th, Gasho 13th, Hakkinen 14th, Gugelmin 15th, Aguri Suzuki in 16th position, and that is Schumacher coming up to lap Mika Hakkinen. Two of the drivers we're going to be hearing a lot more about in future. There's that snake of cars, Bertrand Gachot, followed by Hakkinen, who is being passed by Schumacher. Mika Hakkinen, only 23 years old, comes from Finland, a protege of Keke Rosberg, And at the present moment, the Finnish driver is in 14th position, having been lapped by the first two. And Nigel Mansell's requirement now, and he will know it as well as anybody else, is to just drive a cool, sensible race. There's a 12-second gap between him and Schumacher that you're watching at, and above all else, he has to be very careful about how and when he passes people.
Yes, and the rain is still coming down, not hard, but steadily, and most certainly keeping the track wet. You can see there the spray from the McLaren as those big groove tyres, and that's a Heinz-Harald in the wall. I see the left rear tyres had a bit of a, rear wheels had a bit of a bump, so that's the end of the day for him. And that was Andre Chiesa. Senna still fending off Berger, and I think it's fair to say with Berger being that close to him that Berger could probably go a little bit quicker if he could only get in front. Meantime, Schumacher is holding his gap to the McLarens. Schumacher, of course, as well as chasing Mansell, which is probably a bit of a hopeless case, but certainly well worth keeping the pressure up and giving Mansell no opportunity to actually relax. But as he, of course, has got to fend off the two McLarens. Oh dear.
Maurizio Gugelmin, what a dreadful season this is turning out to be for the Jordan team, because Maurizio Gugelmin, who's obviously hit something, probably, and I'm only guessing, because his tyres are worn, he's almost at the pit lane entrance as he spins off there, as he was being lapped by the two McLarens, one of them driven, ironically enough, by his great friend Ayrton Senna. So the retirements now include Andrea De Cesaris, Martin Brundle, Johnny Herbert, Riccardo Patrese, Andrea Chiesa and Maurizio Gugelmin with lap 27. Here is the battle to watch. We were with momentarily there Gerhard Berger chasing his teammate Ayrton Senna, who is third, ahead of them by some 5 seconds. In second place, Schumacher, who is 13 seconds behind race leader Nigel Mansell, with Alesi in 6th position, Comas still 7th, and Griard in the Tyrrell is 8th.
And that was Capelli we were watching, who's holding off Alesi very well, still got a 4-second advantage over him. Remember, Alesi put himself behind with the spin as we watch the McLaren, and now we watch for Berger's car, watching Senna in front of him. And Berger sawing away at the wheel. These cars are extremely nervous in these conditions. Believe me, 700 horsepower is a lot of power, even with all that downforce and those great big sticky grooved wet weather tyres. Remember, the car only weighs 500 kilos, and Mansell still throwing up water. So from his point of view, he'll be quite happy that the track is most definitely wet, in that he doesn't have to worry about decisions. And there's Gugelmin walking in. He won't be particularly pleased to answer questions when you've just thrown it into the wall. The last thing you want to do is have to tell everybody that you've done it. But still, he's a very polite young man, and he's doing the good thing and answering the questions.
Well, with Nigel Mansell making his way through the field, another Englishman who's very happy here today is Ken Tyrrell. He's one of the longest-serving people in Grand Prix racing, who's seen so many of the great drivers of the past in his team, including 3 times world champion Jackie Stewart, and it is Ken Tyrrell's birthday. So from the whole Grand Prix scene, many happy returns of the day, Ken. As we ride there with Ayrton Senna coming out to lap Häkkinen in the Lotus, and Jonathan Palmer has got Maurizio Gugelmin.
Well, Maurizio, this must be a miserable moment for you. We know that everyone's been wanting to talk to you. Was that just a simple mistake? Clearly the track's getting very slippery and your tyres are losing their best form. I'm sure that's right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Basically the problem is we started with the circuit a little bit drier, which took the best out of the tyres, and now it's raining a little bit more, and it's just not enough water. The surface is just very greasy. It's like the tire is coming off from the tarmac and it's just running on oil, basically, no grip at all.
Do you think the teams will need to stop any more for further
I think they may have to replace rear tires at least.
Maurizio, thanks for your time.
So there is confirmation that the dry running, or when the track was drying out, did indeed do damage to this very soft compound, chunky tyres. And this, of course, is a problem that all the drivers out there are having to contend with. They are well aware of it. Of course, they drive by feel, so they don't actually measure the grip as they go along. They just feel what the car's doing. And there is Michael Schumacher, and there is a young man with a great deal of talent and feel, and in second place. But he has been threading his way through the traffic, and as a result has lost ground to the two McLarens behind him, or rather they've gained ground on him. The gap now only just over 3 seconds to Ayrton Senna. So Schumacher will be feeling the pressure from behind. He will be in a hurry to get through the back markers, but he should of course be bearing in mind the fact that once he's through, the two McLarens will have to find their way through. But there's a big glut of traffic in front of him, and I hope we can stay on him just to see how well he's able to deal with it. Of course, we just heard from Gugelmin about the problems with traction. It will be the rear tyres that are more damaged, because of course they have to take all the power and be wheel spin on a damp track, but that's enough to cook them. And it's clearly quite difficult to get a run. There are the McLarens in the background, so they will have Schumacher in sight, but they got a couple of cars between them and Schumacher already.
As they come up to try to take Michele Alboreto, who is in 12th position, as you look there at Sean Lacey. Now Schumacher has got ahead of him Pierluigi Martini, who is in 10th position. Ahead of him is Gabriele Tarquini, who is in 9th place. And Schumacher, as James has said, has got to get a move on, because Senna is under 3 seconds behind the Benetton now. We're on lap 30, which is getting on for half distance in this 65-lap race. Mansell leading Schumacher by 16 seconds. 3 seconds behind him is Senna, who is 1 second ahead of Berger, 4th, who is just under 5 seconds ahead of Capelli, 5th, who is 3 seconds ahead of Alesi, 6th. Comas is still 7th and has been lapped. 8th is Briard, 9th Tarquini, 10th Martini, 11th Leto, and Schumacher here is coming up to take Tarquini, who is in 9th position.
Yes, and Schumacher's certainly giving it everything he's got. He locked his one of the front brakes just then, but he's got through one more there, and that all counts, because the McLarens, he will be aware of the McLarens coming up behind. Nigel Mansell completes another lap. And Mansell now over a quarter of a minute to the good. Remember, the gap got down to around 11 seconds when he had to thread his way through the traffic. And of course, the big group is going past now. And Schumacher is holding his own in the traffic as far as the McLarens behind are concerned. And that will be a good effort, because of course Schumacher, again, as he threads his way through, and Senna, right in the middle. The two McLaren drivers, and Berger has got past Senna in the traffic. Senna was having a go to get back at him there. Now, we didn't see how that came about, but in the confusion of all the traffic, Gerhard Berger has put one over Ayrton Senna, as can so easily happen, because it all gets very unpredictable. And Senna is not taking it lightly. He's challenging all the way. We saw it when we first picked up on that. He was challenging again at the next corner. And but they would be well advised not to battle each other too much for the moment, while Schumacher is so much in sight. But knuckle under and give chase to Schumacher, and just get through the traffic first.
In order to do which, they've got to pass Pierluigi Martini in the Dallara Ferrari, and Berger does so. Now, is Martini going to move across and get in between Berger and Senna? But he's holding the inside line as Mansell goes through to complete his 31st lap out of 65, and Senna has taken the position, but neither of them have caught and passed Martini, and the Dallara is using the 1992 specification V12 Ferrari engine, and that's Eric Comas. What's happened to Comas in the Ligier, who's slipping and sliding, and Berger goes through. So now it looks to me as though Olivier Griard will be moving up, and Ayrton Senna is in 3rd position, and you watch him now, and he is some 20 seconds behind Michael Schumacher, who has dealt with the traffic in exemplary form. Now, this is a replay of Senna.
Yes, and that's Berger getting held up there. You see, that is the problem in the wet with Martini. Senna goes down the inside, and that allows him to regain the place, and Berger still behind Martini. And Berger having a real go now. He's inside here. And he'll want to get that's right, now he's planted it across the bows of Martini. Martini therefore has to lift, and it's been a bit of a traumatic thing in the traffic, and probably not the cleverest tactics by McLaren to get involved in a bit of infighting at such a critical stage, because it has allowed Michael Schumacher to get away. And now we're seeing Comas, his spin. He'd clearly had a spin then when we picked up on him, and well, he was lucky to get going again from there, but he kept the engine running. You see, had the car in 1st gear straight away and back on the track. And that didn't do anything to help the McLaren cause, but they got through quite clearly. And Nigel Mansell has just completed another lap, and he leads. Back to nearly 18 seconds on Michael Schumacher. Good comfortable cushion, and the net result of the McLaren infighting and the fun and games in the traffic is that Senna and Berger have dropped back. Schumacher has pulled away to over 6 seconds on them now, and that will help him as Eric Comas goes into the pits.
Having, of course, lost his 7th position to Gabriele Tarquini in the Fonmetal, and it's not beyond reason that somebody's going to drop out in the top 6, in which case we could have a Fonmetal in the points, and that would be a terrific achievement for this gallant little Italian team that's tried so hard. Gabriele Tarquini is now 7th, Pierluigi Martini in the Dallara Ferrari is 8th, 9th is Michele Alboreto, 10th is JJ Leto, 11th is Bertrand Gachot, 12th is Mika Hakkinen, and 13th and 14th, Eric Comas, who's in the pits, and in 14th position, Aguri Suzuki, as we watch race leader Nigel Mansell. And you look down from the helicopter, you can see the distinctive twists and turns of this Catalunya circuit on the outskirts of Barcelona. And this race is being held 5 months earlier than it was last year. Mansell coming through to complete another lap. And last year, it was not unlike this as far as weather conditions are concerned, but there's no doubt that it's very, very early, perhaps too early now.
And you saw then that Nigel Mansell bothered to move over to the right-hand side of the straight, which is not the normal line, which Schumacher is not doing, and that was to run the tyres into the wetter part of the circuit when he's not in the corner, to keep them cool, to stop, to try and slow down the deterioration of the rubber on those tyres, to cool them down in the water, stop them chunking, and that is good sensible driving by Mansell, looking after his wet tyres. And that is a lazy into the pits, and I suspect this may be for tyres. It is indeed for a fresh set of wets to see if he can find more grip. Now, it will be interesting to see if Lazy can get a real quantum advantage out of that. That was a good quick tyre change by Ferrari.
And he hasn't lost his place, because Tarquini in 7th position is a long, long way behind. Of course, he's been lapped by Nigel Mansell. Comas has just gone through, having made his tyre change. And on lap 34 out of 65, with quite a few retirements, as you watch Jean Alesi it's, sorry, as you watch Ivan Capelli, it is Mansell leading by 15 seconds from Michael Schumacher. 7 seconds ahead of Senna, who is now 4 seconds ahead of Gerhard Berger, who's dropped back. Capelli is in 5th position. You're watching Michael Schumacher now in 2nd position. Alesi, having changed tyres, is in 6th place, and it's going to be more than interesting to see how he moves up through the field, if he does, as Mansell goes through and completes a lap. He's now on his 35th lap, 30 to go. He's just gone round in 1 minute 45.4. And Schumacher is lapping 1.2 seconds faster than Mansell at the present moment. That may or may not be significant. Mansell knows what the situation is. He is in his 169th Grand Prix. He's got all that experience behind him. Schumacher is only driving in his 10th Grand Prix, although he's an incredibly mature young man for his comparative lack of experience. And Mansell will know exactly how to pace himself, listen to the radio from the pits, watch his pit signals, but we'll keep a careful eye on that. Schumacher is currently gaining on the Englishman at the rate of 1.2 seconds a lap, and there is Ivan Capelli, 5th position, and he's now 24 seconds ahead of Alesi, who has changed tyres.
Absolutely, and we'll keep an eye on that gap, and that was a very, very good tyre stop by Ferrari, because to lose only some 20 seconds on the road, including changing the tyres, is very good indeed, because remember, the majority of time lost in a tyre stop is the decelerating and accelerating time and threading one's way through the pit lane. So we will watch Alesi's progress to Capelli, because it's important to know just what a gap, or what difference rather, the new tyres on Alesi's car are going to make, and everybody else will be watching that.
Some improvement there from Alesi, because I've just been looking at the Goodyear tyres off the back of his car with the Goodyear engineer Lee Gorg, and they are about half worn. There's no great sign of overheating, but they're definitely worn, and once they're down to that level, they lose significant amounts of grip.
Yes, and in fact, I'm sure all the other teams in the pit road, or the serious teams in the pit road, will be watching this gap with great interest to see just what Alesi can do, and then out will come the calculators to see whether it's worth the gain in performance. The track's wet enough for the tyres not to suffer a lot more damage at the moment, but whether the gain in performance with a fresh set is going to give them an overall race time improvement, bearing in mind the number of laps they have to go. So they'll have to spend a couple of laps watching Jean Alesi, and Capelli's doing a 1:49 at the moment, but he has traffic as Alesi goes through, some 19 seconds behind. Now his first lap, flying lap there, was a 1:44, but Mansell's shown he can do that on the worn stuff. Schumacher's doing a 45.1 on worn tyres, and that means that Alesi will have to find a significant improvement, but of course he has to feel his way round this track with the fresh tyres on. It's not as simple. You cannot go out and take the car straight to the limit, or at least not if you want to finish the race with any certainty, and so there will still be time for Alesi to find a certain amount of improvement, so we will continue to watch that for you.
Yes, the significant lap, I think, is going to be probably the one after this one, as Mansell goes through to complete his 36th, because Alesi's got to get his tyres up to speed, up to temperature. There he is on those new tyres, which he's got the full benefit of the deepest possible tread. Schumacher now is 14.7 seconds. Mansell has responded to the German's attack. He's now gone round nearly a full second faster than the German that you're watching now, and seems very much to be in control. Senna is lapping faster than Schumacher, 3rd position. The gap is down to 8 seconds between the two of them. That's Schumacher.
Yes, and all that theorising I've just been doing is may well be rendered irrelevant if a little shift in the weather persists, and that shift is, as you can see on the track, that the rain has eased a bit, and you can see on certain points of the circuit we're getting a slightly drier line, and if that is the case, it will certainly be right for drivers to stay out there and soldier on their existing set of wets, because their next choice is liable to be slicks. rather than more wet. Lazy, in the meantime, his gap is now down to 14 seconds, so he's certainly made a substantial gain already on Capelli, who is still lapping in the 48s, and he's the slowest of the first 7 runners out there, first 6 runners out on the circuit, and maybe he's suffering likewise from very worn tyres. Now, there is Schumacher, still a bit misty. Let's look for the amount of spray coming up off the tyres. You see Senna there, staying on the wetter part of the circuit, trying to keep water on his tyres. Quite a wide line, and certainly that's too wet for slicks there. If you can see the tyres throwing up water. And there is, you've got a good shot there of how it's drying, starting to dry on the racing line.
An interesting factor as you watch Ayrton Senna go through in 3rd position is that last year the fastest lap by Riccardo Patrese, who finished in 3rd place with his teammate Nigel Mansell, winning one of the finest races of his career, was 1 minute 23, as near as makes no difference. And they're lapping now at about 1 minute 44, and that is Bertrand Gachot out of the Spanish Grand Prix in his La Rousse. Now, I was saying that difference in time of laps compared with last year, because it may well be that this race will run up to one of the 2 alternatives. It either has to go 65 laps or 2 hours. Now, if it takes over 2 hours to do 65 laps, they will have to stop before the full scheduled distance. Schumacher, you can see his tyres are good and worn. Now, Alesi is lapping 1 minute 43.7 compared with Ayrton Senna 1 minute 43.6 and Mansell 1:44.9. But Mansell, I remind you, has got a 13-second lead over the man that you are watching, Michael Schumacher, with Ayrton Senna chasing him there.
However, that was Alesi's fastest lap of the race so far, including when the track was relatively dry at around 20 laps. Or just before then, when I was speculating it was time to change tyres, and then the weather made a fool out of me, and very kindly, and down came the rain again. But Alesi is not far away from having regained all the ground that he lost in the pit stop, and it certainly means that his stop was a worthwhile thing, and it may be that people could feel that they might have done the same thing a bit earlier. Now it's certainly too late, because, as I say, what's going through minds now is whether and when to change to dry tyres.
Well, it may be Ken Tyrrell's birthday, but it's not a very happy one from the racing point of view. Andrea de Cesaris retired early on, round about lap 4. Olivier Griard is out now, so both the Tyrrell Ilmores have retired. You're watching Schumacher. There are effectively 17 cars left out of the 26 who started. Mansell 14 seconds ahead of Schumacher here, who is 6 seconds ahead of Senna. The battle between Senna and Berger has been resolved very much in the Brazilian's favour, because Gerhard Berger in 4th place is now some 6 seconds behind his teammate. Ivan Capelli is a long way in the Ferrari behind Gerhard Berger's McLaren, and 10 seconds ahead of his teammate Jean Alesi, who is in 6th position. And in spite of the fact that he's got new tyres, the Ferrari is going a lot slower than both Berger and Senna, and for that matter Schumacher and Mansell. Now, I don't know whether he's got some kind of a mechanical problem, but the new tyres haven't made any difference, any beneficial difference to his lap speeds at all. Mansell, both in the inset and the on-car camera. Schumacher there. And the Benetton B192 is in its first race, and behind you can see Ayrton Senna, who's cutting the time down. He's lapping a second faster than Schumacher, and the gap between the McLaren there in 3rd place and the Benetton in front is now down to 5.2 seconds.
Yes, he's been chipping away for a few laps now. It was 8 seconds, and Senna is now starting to put pressure on Schumacher. Berger, in the meantime, is not sustaining the pace. He's dropped back a bit. He's now 6 seconds behind Ayrton Senna. And Jean Alesi back to the speed he was going before. He was in fact in traffic. He's had a back marker to go past, but he's catching Capelli, now only 8 seconds behind. Remember, he was some 5 or so seconds behind him when he went in. So he's very nearly back to square. And he's definitely got a fresher and better set of tyres on his car to boot. So his move has certainly paid dividends as we look at Mansell with the wide shot on the inset and a bit of break-up there. Mansell still apparently plain sailing for him, but not as easy as he's had it in the other races this year. And once more moving over to the wetter part of the circuit to keep those wet weather tyres cool, and that certainly is the right thing to do. And the other drivers who should be doing that now on the straights, seeking the wetter parts in case they have to go the whole distance on these tyres. Whee! And a big slide then from the Ferrari. And surprise, surprise, that's Alesi. And I think that may be some frustration with Mika Häkkinen, who's in front of him, because Alesi's a man in a hurry, and there he is. Gave it a little bit too much welly there, but he held it well. He's got tremendous car control, Jean Alesi, and he's still behind the Lotus. And in fact, he pushed Häkkinen into a bit of a slide just now. And the blue flag for Mika Häkkinen, warning him that he's under attack, but I'm sure he knows that already. And we have news of Riccardo Patrese.
Well, it seems that Alesi wasn't the only one who's being frustrated by Häkkinen, James, because Riccardo was lapping and he was coming across Häkkinen. There was some confusion of line, and in that Riccardo went off, which I think just underlines the delicate knife edge that these guys are racing when you've got 700 plus horsepower and just half a ton on these treacherous conditions.
Yes, I'm a bit mystified about the Alesi situation. He's still not ahead of Mika Häkkinen, who's clearly occupying the line that Alesi wants to be on, as a result of which Alesi is lapping slower in 6th position than all the other 5 people in front of him, which is very disappointing indeed for him, to put it mildly.
And finally they've come together, and that was the frustration from Alesi, I'm sure. But one of the problems is, I think, that the Ferrari is sufficiently lacking in power, and the Ford engine in the Lotus is a good one, that Häkkinen is pretty quick down the straights. And well, we didn't see how that coming together. Here now we see Alesi going down the inside, and he would have slid a bit wide, and Häkkinen no doubt will blame him, but certainly Häkkinen was being uncooperative, and we heard that he was being uncooperative with Patrese, and that's out of order. When you're being lapped, you have to get out of the way. It's your responsibility to let the main protagonists in a race go on, and Alesi was lucky though to escape apparently without damage and get going again. But in the meantime, up front, Ayrton Senna is now under 4 seconds behind Michael Schumacher, and Senna, the world champion, going for the lower placings but still giving it the full commitment, everything he's got. Mansell there, a view from on board now, and he is without doubt, Ayrton Senna has his sights set on 2nd place.
Yes, and he's lapping faster than Nigel Mansell, a second faster at the present moment. Mansell leading Schumacher by 14 seconds. There is the German, and we'll see very shortly how close Ayrton Senna is to him visually. It's something like 3.5 seconds in terms of time, and the German will know the situation, as I've said before, because of his pits to car radio. You'll be seeing Ayrton Senna in his mirrors very shortly. Gerhard Berger is dropping back, if anything, as Schumacher stays on the dry line through the right-hander, which leads into the pits straight. Now look for Ayrton Senna, there he is, and Schumacher is 12.8 seconds behind and is catching Mansell. Senna is 4 seconds behind, and Schumacher has now speeded up. His previous lap was faster than that of Senna, and in turn Gerhard Berger is lapping faster than Senna. So things are getting interesting at the front. But Mansell is still securely holding that lead on this, the 43rd lap out of 65, on his way to a 4th victory, although he's still got a good few laps to go. And if he does, he's going to match the record that Ayrton Senna created last year by winning the first 4 Grand Prix of a season. Mansell would have won in South Africa, Mexico, Brazil, and here in Spain to give himself a maximum of 40 points. And not only that, but he would move away from sharing 24 Grand Prix victories with the great Juan Manuel Fangio to close up and join Jim Clark and Niki Lauda, both of whom have scored 25 victories. Now, there is Schumacher second, Senna third. Benetton, Schumacher in only his 10th Grand Prix, Ayrton Senna in his 130th. 3 times world champion.
And the rain's coming down harder again. As you can probably see the spray from the tyres. There's more spray. And there's a view from Senna's car, and that's the spray from Schumacher through which he's having to drive. At the same time, the Schumacher seems to be finding a little bit more grip on the wetter track than Senna, but still those two lapping very quickly indeed. Schumacher and Senna, well, in fact, still just under 4 seconds, the gap. Berger lurking a further 6 seconds away from Senna. And the gap to Mansell now, under 12 seconds, 11.4 seconds. Schumacher there, the ferocity of the battle for second place, carrying them a little bit closer to Mansell, but Mansell appears to be driving a controlled race. He's got something in hand, and maybe his trump card is that he's able to seek out the wet patches and not battle hard and slide the car a lot on the drier line when it was drier. It's now wet again, but for the last 10 laps or so it's been quite dry, and he may well be conserving his tyres, and I would have thought that if he has done those things, and certainly he's been conscious of the tyres, of that we've seen, and if he's succeeded looking after them, come a bit of a grandstand finish, he should have a little bit of extra grip in hand.
Well, watch Schumacher, watch Senna, but although you can't see him, Michele Alboreto, the veteran ex-Ferrari driver, who's finished second in the World Championship, 5 victories in the past, is up to 7th place, having finished a fine 6th in Brazil. And the footwork team, who've changed their engine to the Mugen V10, which in effect is a Honda with a different name on the engine, are getting some reward for all the hard work that they've done. Michele Alboreto in 7th position, 1 position off the points. Mansell is on lap 45 in this 25-lap race. He's responded, he's driving a magnificent race, because he has gone round faster on his previous lap, there he is, than both Schumacher and Ayrton Senna, some 7/10 of a second faster. So it looks as though Mansell has got things very much in control as we watch the newcomer, Schumacher, and I'm looking for the man with the 130th Grand Prix that he's on now, Ayrton Senna. He was out of shot. There he is, and the gap between Schumacher and Ayrton Senna is 3.9 seconds, and they're lapping to within 1/10 of a second, exactly the same speed as each other. So Schumacher is staving off the 3 times world champion, and it's not only a brilliant performance by the German, but something that the Benetton team can be very proud of. This is the B192's first race after all, and for that matter, full credit to the Series 6 Ford Cosworth engine, the HB V8, because that is going extremely well. There was a lot of discussion in the past about whether the right way to go was a V12, a V10 or a V8. Well, there's only one car ahead of the V8 Ford-powered Benetton, and that's Mansell.
And behind them and the battle for second place, the tyre change that Alesi had, despite being delayed with his dramas with Mika Hakkinen, he is now on Capelli's tail, and will be looking for a way past his teammate, and the fresher wet tyres should certainly help him in that. Track now pretty streaming wet up at the top of the circuit there, and you can see the cars are moving the water off the line, but there's plenty of water lying, and there are the Ferraris. So there is Capelli, and right behind him, we just widen out a bit, and there is a Lazy behind. That, incidentally, is Dallara in front of them. They'd be confused, and you can see that you could see the extra grip that a Lazy had there. Capelli sliding wide on the more worn tyres. And just then, of course, he's in traffic now, but the last lap before he caught Capelli, where Alesi, as the track got wetter, was the quickest man on the circuit, as one would expect, with the fresh rubber on.
I remind you that the Ferraris have got a highly sophisticated traction control device, and John Alesi was pushing very, very hard indeed in yesterday's wet practice. He's coming up to go through and take 5th position now from Ivan Capelli. He's lapping 3 seconds, no, 2.5 seconds faster than his teammate on his new tyres, Alesi. And he was pushing very, very hard in yesterday's appallingly wet conditions, deliberately to find what the limits were of the Ferrari, which has been so much improved since Brazil. He found them several times by going off. Here's a replay of John Alesi pulling out of the slipstream of his teammate Ivan Capelli's Ferrari, going through into 5th position, and John Alesi is lapping now in 1 minute 45.8, which is not very much quicker than, in fact, slower than some of the men who are in front of him, including Schumacher, including Mansell, excluding Ayrton Senna, and Senna now is 5 seconds behind Schumacher. The German has responded. He's going half a second a lap quicker than the Brazilian, and I find it very hard to find the right words to express my admiration for 23-year-old Michael Schumacher. It's only his 10th Grand Prix. He has already scored points in 6 and retired in the other 3. He's had 2 third places and a 4th this season, and when Tom Walkinshaw made his bold move to remove Schumacher from the Jordan team last year, he must subsequently have congratulated himself many times, because he's got a fine driver. Every Grand Prix team is after the German, but knowing Tom Walkinshaw, I suspect that he's got Michael Schumacher's name on a contract for a couple of years ahead. And in that case, with a new V12 engine being developed by Ford for the new Benetton, which is to follow this latest one, and which will almost certainly have a semi-automatic gearbox and reactive suspension, all the goodies, Schumacher will be even more worth watching than he is now. But on lap 47 out of 65, with Alesi scorching his way through the field, you can see how wet it is. I remind you, he is on far newer tyres than everybody else ahead of him, which will give him a great benefit. Mansell leads Schumacher now by only 7 seconds. The German is starting to catch Nigel Mansell. In 3rd place, Ayrton Senna, and he is 5 seconds behind Schumacher, who is the fastest man of the top 3 at the present moment, not by very much. And Gerhard Berger is 10 seconds behind Senna in 4th position. And it's Schumacher is the man to watch. There he is, second of these 2 cars, the yellow and green Benetton, coming up to Mika Häkkinen, who got in Alesi's way, Alesi will say, who got in Patrese way, Patrese said. Now, is he going to let Schumacher through? Yes, he is. No balking there. Schumacher holding his speed, just moving over a bit. And look at the spray coming up from those tyres. It is very, very wet on the Catalunya circuit.
It is indeed, yes. And I think the nerf that Häkkinen got from Alesi has probably alerted him to the error of his ways. But certainly that's a sharp lesson for Häkkinen, and I'm sure there'll be some sentiments expressed afterwards to him that he really has to keep out of the way of the main contenders as they come through, and there is no reason to get in the way. There is no real disadvantage. He's not racing anybody. He doesn't have to keep in the way. He doesn't have to lose any time significantly, and you can see Schumacher really splashing his way around, sliding around in the puddles and driving quite marvellously. These cars are extremely difficult to control, in these sort of conditions. And Schumacher has now got the gap to Mansell down to 5.5 seconds, and he is really starting to catch Nigel Mansell. This is far and away the smallest lead that Mansell has enjoyed in any of this year's races, apart from certainly apart from when he's just got in the lead. But at this stage of a race, he hasn't been threatened at all this year. Senna still just under 5 seconds behind Schumacher, and they have been almost tied together in terms of distance.
Just over 10 seconds then covers the first three. We haven't had that situation in 1992 before. Oh, there is Schumacher. 5.5 seconds behind Nigel Mansell, and I'm beginning to wonder whether Mansell has got a problem, because hey, look at Senna, nearly losing it there. That's how tough it is.
Yes, that's because the rain is really tipping down now. You can see the track is really flooded, and that would explain why Mansell has slowed down at the front. And Schumacher, this really is Schumacher's big chance, and Schumacher must be praying that the race won't be stopped. And now replay here of Senna getting very wobbly and crossed up, and really that was very well held by Senna, because the car is almost floating on that sort of quantity of water. And that is beyond the level of real control. It's there's a lot of prayer involved in that, but he kept it balanced on that knife edge as Mansell goes through, and Schumacher under 5 seconds now, 4.6 seconds behind Nigel Mansell, continuing to catch him. Senna still 5 seconds behind Schumacher, and there's less than 10 seconds covering the first three.
Well, things really are very tricky indeed out there, I think now. The rain is really throwing it down, but also bear in mind that those wet tyres, which were 50% worn, for those who hadn't changed just about 15 laps ago, now must be pretty worn indeed, and a lot of standing water, and I think we're going to see a fair amount of aquaplaning, which is going to result in that kind of Senna drama.
Schumacher, very much the fastest man on the circuit now. Senna in third place. All three on worn tyres, the rain driving down, making the circuit wetter and wetter. It was probably like driving on ice before. There's a bit of a dry line on the left, which they're in now, and Gerhard Berger is a long way behind Senna. There's less than 10 seconds now covering the top three, and John Alesi on those new tyres, you're watching him, is no quicker than anybody else, and looking there just as much in danger of losing it as anyone else.
Yes, and watching the situation up front with Schumacher, the young lion chasing Nigel Mansell for the lead and closing in on him, brings to mind the situation a few years ago in Monte Carlo when Ayrton Senna thought he was headed for his first Grand Prix win. You see a replay here of Alesi, and slithering and sliding, getting all crossed up, getting wide, and that's a good example of just how difficult conditions are. But this reminds me, from a young driver's point of view, of the time when Senna was without doubt on his way to his first Grand Prix win of his career in Monte Carlo, and within a lap he would have been past Alain Prost, who was tiptoeing round in very nasty conditions, and Jackie Ickx, I think it was, who was clerk of the course, then leapt out, showed him the checkered flag, and saved Prost from the ignominy of being beaten by the young upstart, as he then was, Ayrton Senna.
And you saw Mansell and Schumacher in the same shot there. The last time a Benetton won a Grand Prix was Canada last year, when Nelson Piquet won. Now, Schumacher is catching Nigel Mansell, 15 laps to go, as Mansell goes through and completes soon his 50th lap. He's on his 51st lap now. The gap, Mansell leads Schumacher, who is 0.2 of a second faster on that lap. There's Mansell, there is Schumacher, first and second. Now look for Ayrton Senna. You just saw the Brazilian approaching the right-hander.
And I think in the circumstances, Senna has cried enough in terms of trying to stay with Schumacher. He may feel his tyres have done too much, and he certainly would like to pick up the points, but Senna has dropped back. He's now nearly 7 seconds adrift of Schumacher. But Schumacher still everything to play for. Mansell having to defend and under threat for the first time this season, and this is a test indeed for Nigel Mansell. The conditions are horrible, and one that he doesn't want to be put to, and Mansell has put in a quick one, and Mansell looks as if, from the evidence I see with the lap time there, that Mansell has indeed kept something in hand. He has looked after his tyres, and he has responded to Michael Schumacher. He's lapped in under 41.46, Schumacher doing a 1:47.5, and the gap now is over 6 seconds, and he gained a 1.5 seconds on that lap. So Mansell puts a little bit of breathing space back, and you can see that Mansell is certainly giving it everything. He has clearly been playing a conservative game until now. Now he's pressed, he's showing us what he can do.
Indeed he is, and you can see it. Only 6 drivers are on the same lap. There is Schumacher in 2nd position. Senna is still 3rd, 7 seconds behind the German. Berger is in 4th position. Jean Alesi is 5th. Ivan Capelli is 6th. Both the Ferraris in the top 6. Michele Alboreto has been lapped, but is 7th. 8th is Tarquini. 9th is Leto. 10th Martini. 11th is Suzuki. 12th is Häkkinen, notwithstanding the fact that he's been lapped twice. Eric Comas is 13th. Wendlinger is soldiering on in 14th position. Fittipaldi is 15th. And those are the top positions then. In fact, there's been a lot of retirements. There's going to be more before this race finishes, I'm sure, because if somebody doesn't go off on worn tyres and wet track, I shall be very surprised. Schumacher has been matched by Nigel Mansell and more, as James has just said, because Nigel's big effort on the previous lap took him into an increasing lead over Schumacher, and it's now 9 seconds.
And I have to say, that is very impressive driving by Mansell. Another 45.5, 145.5 in these conditions, when the pressure, when he was asked the question, Mansell has answered it really most emphatically, that he's in control and he can do it. And that really is a bit of an up yours to Schumacher, who he allowed to get quite close, and must be a bit of a disappointment for Schumacher. But having said all that, remember that of course the Williams is very much the state-of-the-art superior equipment. But Mansell, under pressure, first time he's had it this year, showed us that he is really driving very well indeed.
Yes, and it's, apart from Mansell and Williams, it is Schumacher and Benetton, especially the new car, that I'm full of admiration for. Because when they came here, the Benetton's team said, well, we think we're going to have the legs of Ferrari. Dare we say we're going to beat the McLarens as well? Well, they're certainly doing so. It's a pity to put, indeed, that Martin Brundle went out so early on the race, in the race after that clutch problem of his, which beached him on the curb, because it would have been so nice to see both the Benettons up front. But Schumacher driving a superlatively good race in a brand new car with a well-developed engine is, apart from Mansell, in my opinion, the man of the race.
Yes, no doubt about that. He's really gone. That's Berger just playing a bit of Russian roulette with Mika Häkkinen there, but Häkkinen, he finally manages to sneak in front. And certainly, you mentioned Martin Brundle then, and his clutch problem really, of course, he was forewarned. He had the problem on the grid, he said, but it does make driving very difficult, particularly in the wet when you've got no clutch. But you're supposed to be able to do that in a Grand Prix car. I do hope that Benetton continue to persevere with Martin Brundle, give him the chance, because when your luck's not running in this business, well, as in most, I suppose, it never rains, it pours, and Brundle has not had the greatest of luck, and he's a very intelligent driver, and he'll persevere and he'll really work at it. But he does need to relax and try and take the pressure off himself, because putting himself under pressure won't help his cause at all. He needs to really relax into his driving now.
And the superb Nigel Mansell, leading the race that you're watching now, is lapping 2 seconds faster than anybody else in these quite dreadful conditions. He was very quick yesterday, but not as quick as Alesi, who, as I said earlier on, was pushing so hard to find how the new traction, or the well-developed, it's not new on the Ferrari, they've had it longer than Williams, the traction control device. But Mansell now is on his 53rd lap, about to complete that and go through in this 65-lap race. There's the board, plus 12.6 seconds ahead of Schumacher. I don't know whether Mansell's having a conversation with the pits. He says, of course, as do all race drivers, if you've got to think about driving the car, there's a problem, because by the time you get to Formula One, you've got to be very much on top of that. What you're thinking about is the tactics and what you have to do, and he knows what he's got to do is stay in front of this man, and he's at 15 seconds now, having gone round again 2 seconds faster than Schumacher, and again Ayrton Senna is pushing hard, but he is still slower than Schumacher.
Yeah, well, it's time now. Mansell has shown us not only how quickly he can go when he pushes, he's also shown us with sliding the car around. We've seen some pictures of him. He's chucking it around, and he is clearly well in control, as we saw just then, the car stepping sideways, just stepping across the line a bit, and he really can afford to ease it up now. He's 15 seconds clear. He's got it in hand if he needs it, but these are indeed treacherous conditions. So he can take it easy and still win comfortably, and that most impressive.
And unsurprisingly, as you watch Nigel Mansell, the fastest lap of the race, which he put up on lap 10, 1 minute 42.5, is very, very much slower than Riccardo Patrese's lap record last year. Indeed, is 20 seconds slower. Now, the conditions now, and you can see those great roosters of spray coming up from the rear wheels and the front wheels of every car, are actually not nearly as bad as they were yesterday. Look at this. This is the on-car camera picture, or was, from Mansell's car, and you can see that he's peering into murk. It means to say that keeping his visor dry will be very difficult indeed, although if you just incline your head to one direction or another, the wind pressure blows the rain off, only for it to reform.
And incidentally, that view that you saw from Mansell's onboard camera was not a trick of the camera or in any way a bad view. That is as much as Mansell sees, or as much as anybody sees in this business when they're following another car in these conditions. And that is the worst of driving in the wet. Driving them, if one has clear visibility in the wet, is just a challenge of car control. But the worst thing is the fact that you drive blind a lot of the time, and it looks to me as if Alesi, I think that is, in the Ferrari, hadn't seen him. It's Capelli, I beg your pardon, and hadn't initially seen him. And you can see, again, that's the car's quite a way in front, and he's nowhere near as close to the wall of spray as he will be. And I hope that we'll see some more onboard shots from Mansell when he's following other cars, because it basically, when you're within 50 yards of the car in front on a streaming wet track, you see nothing at all ahead. You don't even see his rear light. Little twitch from Mansell's car then, and to find out where you are on the track, you have to know what it looks like on the sides, and you literally have to look sideways to see the landmarks, to see where you are.
Ayrton Senna, third position, the fastest man on the track at the moment, unsurprisingly, on his newer tyres, is Jean Alesi, who is lapping 2 seconds faster than Nigel Mansell, but that's of no great importance as far as victory is concerned, or for that matter as far as fourth place is concerned. Alesi in fifth position is some 20 seconds behind the McLaren of Gerhard Berger, and he hasn't got the time to close the gap. Mansell, Schumacher, Senna, Berger, Alesi, Capelli is the order. Michele Alboreto is still in seventh place in the footwork Mugen. 8th position, Gabriele Tarquini in the Fonmetal. 9th, JJ Leto. 10th, Martini. Suzuki is 11th, having been lapped twice. Mika Häkkinen has been lapped twice and is 12th. 13th is Eric Comas, who you remember spun earlier on, as Mansell comes up to lap Pierluigi Martini, who is 10th, to lap him again. Now, it's at a time like this that my heart comes into my mouth, because the driver in front has not necessarily seen the driver behind coming up much, much faster and might not move over in time.
Yes, well, by the same token that you can't see ahead of you, nor can the driver in front see anything in his mirrors except his own wall of spray in these conditions. So he, apart from, and this is where one has to rely on the flag marshals, who do such a tremendous job, because they're the people who give you a signal. And there is Senna going off, and that was Ayrton Senna spinning the engine. He's kept it all going. Has he kept his engine running? Yes, he has. And as one would expect. And Ayrton Senna probably hasn't lost a place. No, he had some half a minute on Gerhard Berger. So there, a replay of Senna, just caught out by the puddles. And I think when a driver of the calibre of Ayrton Senna does that, and remember, he is not really driving under great pressure, although he's still chasing Schumacher, it just demonstrates how treacherous the conditions are. And Senna allowed the car to run then, didn't hit the brakes, and that took it out of the sand trap, and that was clever driving. And aware at all times, even when going backwards, and that's what you have to be. So now, Mansell slowed right down, 1 minute 51, the conditions are quite horrendous. Schumacher, he's now just holding his gap once again, he's driving to Schumacher's pace. And Senna's pursuit of Schumacher is all over. He lost 10 seconds in that drama, and in fact he was only some 4 seconds behind.
That spin of Ayrton Senna's was almost a replay of 1991, when a little later on at the course, and the next corner in fact, Ayrton Senna lost it, spun, went onto the gravel trap, and had actually got the car in first gear while he was still going backwards to drive out again and regain the track to finish in 5th position. We're now on lap 58 out of 65. You are looking down on Nigel Mansell, the potential victor, and he is quicker than a lot of the people behind him, but he's got so much of a lead now, 13.7 seconds over Schumacher, who got to within some 4 seconds of Nigel Mansell at one point, only for the Englishman to respond. And I suspect that his tyres are in a better condition than those of anybody behind him, except Jean Alesi. So, lap 58 now in this 65-lap race. Nigel Mansell lapping in about 1 minute 51 seconds. Schumacher is 13 seconds behind the Englishman. As you look at Jean Alesi in 5th position, Ayrton Senna is in 3rd place. As Alesi goes through and takes Häkkinen. And again, you see, Alesi lifts his hand off the steering wheel and makes a gesture at Mika Häkkinen, who's already nearly had him off once in the race earlier on. Now what's going to happen? Häkkinen has got plenty of power from that Ford V8 engine, and Alesi goes past him. Now this is about 120 miles an hour, that top corner, even in these conditions, dropping downhill into the right-hander before the start and finish straight. And not very far to go now. A replay.
Yes, and once again, Häkkinen not really paying attention to what's happening behind him, although in these, well, now the conditions are so bad, that is slightly more forgivable. But he's had his lesson, and that looks like Eric Comas walking back. And so Comas's race has come to a premature end. But in the meantime, Alesi has got a lot of reason to hurry, because he's now only 3 seconds behind Gerhard Berger. He's hauled in an enormous distance, courtesy of having the fresher tyres on for the conditions. And there is the battle. There is Berger ahead of Alesi. And Alesi now at this stage, with some 6 or 7 laps to go, is favourite to snatch 4th place from Gerhard Berger.
I don't think he'll get 3rd position from Ayrton Senna. He's lapping faster than Senna, but not fast enough to close the gap. And anyway, he's still got to get past Gerhard Berger, and that won't necessarily be easy. Now, here they are. Berger in 4th place. Alesi in 5th position. Alesi in 4th position. Gerhard Berger gives way. He knows exactly what the score is. He knows what he can do in his car. He knows he's driving as fast as he possibly can in the conditions on his worn tyres. And so Jean Alesi is starting to look as though he did make the right decision, albeit a bit late in the day. He would of course have been a lot quicker. This is another replay of him taking the place, 4th position from Gerhard Berger. He would have been a lot further up the field had it not been for having to slow down after he had hit Mika Häkkinen in trying to get past the Finnish driver. We're on lap 60 now, or at least Nigel Mansell is, and he's lapping 5 seconds faster than Schumacher. He's lapping 2 seconds faster than Senna. He's lapping slower by about 1.5 seconds than Jean Alesi, who has just moved up into 4th position. And Mansell, of course, is much faster than Gerhard Berger and Ivan Capelli, who is in 6th place. Now, still in 7th position, Alboreto has been lapped, as has Capelli in 6th. Leto is still 8th, Martini 9th, Tarquini is in 10th position, and Mika Häkkinen is finally out of the race. I don't think I've ever met anybody as irrepressible and as good-humoured and determined as Mika Häkkinen. That's his last race, I suspect, in the old Lotus, as it was Johnny Herbert's. The new car is here, looking absolutely superb. It's going to be testing at Imola this coming week, and at least one of them, hopefully 2, Lotus say, will be at the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola, which is the next one. We're looking at Nigel Mansell, who is on his 61st lap. And he's driven a magnificent race. Took the lead as soon as the lights changed to green, and that is Jean Alesi coming up alongside the footwork Mugen of veteran Michele Alboreto in 7th position, and Michele will desperately be hoping that somebody drops out in front of him so that he can again finish in the points to get one for the Japanese sponsored team and these Japanese engine suppliers, Mugen. And Jean Alesi, the French Sicilian, having made his name in the Tyrrell team, having transferred to Ferrari in exchange for a gigantic amount of money that the Ferrari team were prepared to spend to get him, like Mansell, has driven an excellent race, 4th position, Berger in 5th place, and dropping back rapidly with Ivan Capelli in 6th position. And it's good news for Ferrari. Both of them are in the points, which is more than they were earlier on in the season. They failed to finish with Alesi in South Africa and Mexico, and Ivan Capelli. Out of 6 starts, they've only had 2 finishes so far, Ferrari. And Luca Montezemolo, who was put in charge of the Ferrari team and who is here in Spain, said yesterday, we know we've got a lot to do. We've done an enormous amount in the last month. I am here to underline Ferrari's determination to continue in Grand Prix racing, because there have been rumours that they were going to pull out, and that is very good news that this most traditional and historic of Grand Prix teams is staying. Mansell now is on his 62nd lap. After that, lap 63, lap 64, lap 65, between him and a 4th successive Grand Prix victory. Schumacher coming up to take Pierluigi Martini, 10th position, and if Schumacher stays where he is, it will be his highest position in his short career. 3rd in Mexico and Brazil, the last 2 Grand Prix, 4th in South Africa, and it looks as though he's going to be 2nd in Spain. An amazing achievement. Senna, who will not be at all happy to see the World Championship lead that Nigel Mansell has over him extend by a further 6 points. 10 points for Mansell, potentially. 4 points for Ayrton Senna, potentially. And 6 points there for Michael Schumacher, potentially. I say potentially because they're on lap 62. There's still 3 laps to go at the end of this one. And in conditions like this and on worn tyres like those, there's many a slip, twixt, cup and lip between steering wheel and tyres. Schumacher. Look at the Benetton. There'll be a big celebration at Whitney tonight, and deservedly so, because the Ross Brawn, the man who designed the brilliant Jaguar Sprint World Championship sports car race car last season, and has helped Rory Byrne to design this Benetton car, will be more than happy to finish second in their first race and beaten only by the Williams. Senna coming out of that, that's where he slid off on the previous lap, and he enters the start and finish straight, and there's no doubt at all in my mind now that Ayrton Senna has settled for third position in the same way that Schumacher has settled for second position, because Mansell on lap 63 out of 65 leads Michael Schumacher by 27 points, and he leads Senna 27 seconds, and he leads Senna by 11 seconds.
And Alesi is putting in a tremendous charge to try and catch Senna. He is now 7 seconds behind, and for instance, he pulled some 6 seconds off Senna on the last lap, and at that rate, he has an outside chance of catching him and having a go, because we saw how easily he was able to get past Gerhard Berger. Remember, he's got markedly more grip, courtesy of that fresh set of tyres he took on board halfway through the race, and this would indeed give us something to shout about at the end of the race, a dramatic finish. Watch for Alesi. There is Senna. And that, I think you'll find, is Capelli. Capelli, of course, being lapped by Senna. And holding him up, and they may have orders, may have a message from the Ferrari team that don't be in a hurry to let Senna through, because Alesi is coming up. And Senna, in fact, has got 2 cars in front of him, and when you're fighting for grip as clearly the world champion is, that makes it all the more difficult, and it's much wetter offline, so if the tyres are pretty worn, getting offline gets difficult. So Senna has problems to hold on to his third place.
And he won't do it. Senna out of the Spanish Grand Prix, and that has made his World Championship chances more than fraught, because there's going to be no points for the Brazilian. We didn't see what happened. So Ayrton Senna, the world champion, having finished 30. Now here's a replay coming up of some kind. It's on car camera, and you can see that he slid off. Hopefully we'll get an exterior shot which showed us exactly what happened. That looked like the same sort of thing that happened to Riccardo Patrese as he dragged along the wall backwards with his... Here it is. He's going through on the inside and taking Capelli, and he'll lose it.
Yeah, it's getting off the line onto the wetter part of the track. Well, no, he held that part of the corner. Well, we didn't see how it finished. And we're back to the onboard camera, but that really doesn't show us how it came. And there is Mansell, and for him, no dramas. He's been able, courtesy of the superior Williams chassis, to keep his tyres in better shape than the others, all short of Alesi, who made the switch. And when the pressure came on from Schumacher, it really looked for a moment as if Schumacher was posing a real threat to Mansell, but then finally he let him get to under 4 seconds, and then finally Mansell responded. He turned up the wick, and he was off, and it was most impressive to see.
So Nigel Mansell is on his 65th and last lap. Now there is less than 3 miles between him and the checkered flag, seeing it first for the 4th race in succession, having won in South Africa. having won in Mexico, having brilliantly won in Brazil, and he has driven an absolutely copybook race. He's dominated it all the way. When anybody has challenged him, he has fought back. Michael Schumacher there, taking Christian Fittipaldi and lapping him, is going to finish higher than he's ever finished in any of his previous 9 Grand Prix. Another magnificent achievement. But it means to say that when Mansell sees that checkered flag, which he has yet to do, he will have increased his World Championship points to 40, and he will have increased his lead over everybody else quite dramatically. It means to say, too, that with Senna out of the race, Williams are going to be increasing their Constructors' Championship lead. So, only a few corners now to go for Nigel Mansell. People ask all the time, is this his World Championship year, having finished second in the World Championship 3 times? Well, I don't know whether it is or not. There's a long way to go. There are 16 Grand Prix, and this is only the 4th. But Mansell has not been in as strong a position as this before.
And with the car advantage he has, really only injury could stop Mansell now. He really has the situation well under control. Patrese has hurt his chances, but at least we saw a spirited drive of Patrese while it lasted, and Mansell coming up last corner to take the checkered flag and make it 4 out of 4, but a very different 4 out of 4 to the win, the 4 out of 4 that Senna got in the first 4 races last year. This has been total domination by Nigel Mansell.
Yes, Senna had trouble in every one of his first 4 Grand Prix victories of 1991. You're watching Michael Schumacher coming home to a superb second place, as good in its way as Nigel Mansell's win is. And very soon behind him is Jean Alesi. So there is Schumacher, absolutely overjoyed. Alesi is only going to be about 2 seconds behind. There he is in 3rd position. Jean Alesi, as Schumacher has had his best drive of the year, and so has Jean Alesi. His previous highest position was 4th. Now he's 3rd, well pleased with himself, as is Mansell. Well, what can you say about the Spanish Grand Prix? You can say, without a shadow of doubt, that try as hard as they have in the last 4 weeks, the opposition have made very little impact on the domination of the Williams team and Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese, because don't forget that Patrese was going extremely well, and it wasn't a car problem that put him out of the race.
That's absolutely right, but above all, you can say about the Spanish Grand Prix that we can thank the clerk of the weather, because this weather gave us at least a motor race, and we had a real race with plenty of action and drama, and it was a hard race for everybody except Nigel Mansell, who gave us a clue. He made us think for a little while that it was a difficult race. That was Frank Williams being wheeled to the celebrations and looking very pleased indeed, and well he might. But this is a very different 4 out of 4 to the one we saw Senna do last year, as I just said. It was absolute domination, and they've had it for speed, and the Williams team confirm their dominance even in the wet. They did a lot of work yesterday in the wet with Mansell, and that showed their commitment and their professionalism, if there was ever any doubt about that, and really a tremendous win.
And in the closing stages, more excitement, because while Mansell won, Schumacher was 2nd and Alesi 3rd, with Berger 4th. Up into 5th position with the disappearance of Ivan Capelli comes Michele Alboreto to score 2 points for the footwork team, his 2nd time in the points in 2 successive races, with Pierluigi Martini scoring a point for Dallara in 6th position. 7th, Aguri Suzuki in the 2nd footwork. 5th and 7th, that's the best race that the footwork ex-Arrows team have had for a very, very long time. And a rich reward for Karl Wendlinger in the virtually unsponsored March team, because the Austrian has finished in 8th position, with his teammate Paul Belmondo, as you saw from the caption there, finishing 12th in his first Grand Prix. So now Nigel Mansell is streets ahead in the World Championship. 40 points he's scored, which gives him a 22-point lead over Riccardo Patrese. Michael Schumacher only 1 point behind the Williams driving Italian Patrese, and some way ahead of Gerhard Berger. With Ayrton Senna, no points from the Spanish Grand Prix. It's turning out to be a terrible Grand Prix year for the 3 times world champion. Let us not forget, however, that after 4 races last year, there you see the Constructors' Championship situation, 41 points Williams lead Benetton by. Benetton now 5 points ahead of McLaren, who are 3 points ahead of Ferrari. But let us not forget that at the time of the French Grand Prix last year, McLaren had an enormous lead over Williams, and it looked as though they'd got it made. But then Nigel Mansell won 3 Grand Prix on the trot in France, in Britain, and in Germany. There is the victorious Mansell. And Williams and Mansell fought back, and it was a close fight thereafter for the 1991 World Championships for drivers and constructors. So, although Mansell's won the first 4, although Williams have won the first 4 and taken the first 2 places in the first 3, the World Championship is a long way from being resolved. But certainly after the Spanish Grand Prix.
Daar staat de wagen van de wereldkampioen. Besmeurd en beschadigd. Zal hem niet in dank worden afgenomen dat hij op 2 ronden van het einde in een eigenlijk comfortabele positie er nog uit is gegaan. Daar ziet u Antonio Samaranch.
Recordem, doncs, Nigel Mansell ara incrementa el seu lideratge en el Campionat Mundial de Fórmula 1, suma 10 punts més, afegir els 30 punts.
Daar zijn ze. Nigel Mansell, breedwuivend. Michael Schumacher, dolblij met zijn 2e plaats. En Jean Alesi al even tevreden met zijn 3e plaats. Schumacher is heel blij. Dat zie je. Hij mag hier zijn ook. Hij heeft een ronduit schitterende Grand Prix gereden. Dit is wat anders dan de soms uitgestreken gezichten die je op het podium te zien krijgt. Ja. Je zou er af en toe bij gaan vergeten dat een aantal van deze jongens, ondanks alles, toch nog veel plezier hebben aan hun beroep.
Het is niet gespeeld, hè, want als je te kijken naar bekende gezichten daar beneden aan de tribune.
Hij kan zijn geluk niet op. Wat kan dat worden als hij een keer wint?
Ja. En dat komt er nog ooit van. Zeker wel.
Natuurlijk zien we daar.
Lijkt wel te luisteren.